Demis Hassabis, co-founder and CEO of DeepMind, he believes we're close to AGI, artificial general intelligence. The key? Balanced scaling and innovation. Imagine AI solving our biggest problems: limitless energy, curing disease, ending scarcity. But there's a catch: agentic AI brings massive risks. This transformation is happening 10 times faster than the Industrial Revolution. We need responsible governance and new economic systems now. The future is coming. Are we ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're trying to move past the daily headlines, the product updates, and really get into the fundamental questions, the big ones.
The existential ones, really.
Exactly. We're talking about the future of intelligence, the actual limits of computation, and, well, the massive societal shifts that are headed our way.
And to do that, we're grounding this in insights from one of the field's chief architects. Our source material today is a really comprehensive look at the thinking of Demis Hassabis, the CEO and co-founder of Google DeepMind.
Right, he's giving us a kind of altitude check. It's not about what AI can do right now, but what AGI must do scientifically to even be possible.
And the context for all this it's just wild. I mean, Hassabis himself said the last year felt less like 12 months and more like 10 years packed into 1 year.
It really did. And it wasn't just things getting faster, it was a complete shift in the center of gravity. We moved away from thinking just about large language models.
Which are passive, right? They wait for a prompt.
They wait for a human. But now we're talking about the emergence of agentic AI.
And that transition to agents changes everything. It's what fundamentally alters the risk profile, but also the capability profile.
So we're shifting from a system that's great at, say, summarizing an article if you ask it
to a system that has a degree of autonomy. It can use tools, it can pursue multi-step goals over time. When an AI starts to act in the world, the potential for breakthroughs, well, it just explodes.
And the potential for unintended consequences.
That too, absolutely.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to try and synthesize this. We need to extract the critical advancements, especially in science, confront these weird paradoxes in how the models perform.
The jagged intelligence problem.
Exactly. Then we need to understand why simulation and these world models are suddenly so indispensable. And finally, we have to brace ourselves for the societal shifts that Hassabis believes will completely dwarf the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with the most dramatic part. Applying AI to foundational science. Hassabis is really focused on what he calls root node problems.
It's such a great concept. A root node problem is a fundamental discovery that once you solve it, you don't just solve one thing.
It's like a cascade.
It's a cascade, yeah. It unlocks benefits everywhere downstream. Think of science like a huge tree. Solving a root node problem is like figuring out the chemistry of the soil. It just makes every single branch healthier and grow faster.
And we have the perfect example of this already, right? AlphaFold. It's almost 5 years old now, which is ancient in AI years.
Right. And AlphaFold was the proof point. It showed that these massive, seemingly intractable problems like protein folding, they're actually computationally solvable with modern AI.
Using transformers, but also, and this is key, a lot of domain-specific knowledge.
Deep domain knowledge, yes. The breakthrough wasn't just predicting a shape. It was, in a sense, inferring the underlying physics, the energy landscapes that govern how these things fold. It changed biology overnight.
So if AI can do that, what's on the hit list now? What are the next root nodes?
Well, the targets are even bigger for civilization. First up is material science.
And specifically, the aspiration to discover a room temperature superconductor. I mean,
That is pure science fiction becoming reality. A material that conducts electricity with zero resistance at room temperature. It would change everything. Power grids with no loss. Instant charging for everything.
But it's not just superconductors, is it?
No. Better batteries, new catalysts, alloys that can withstand insane conditions. The AI basically acts as a super fast hypothesis engine. It can search through these massive combinatorial spaces of elements that no human lab could ever test.
And then there's the big one, the one that's always 20 years away.
Fusion energy, yeah. And look, they've been saying that for 50 years, but DeepMind is in a deep partnership with Commonwealth Fusion. They're focused on the classic tokamak reactors.
So how does AI actually help here? Is it designing the whole reactor?
No, it's more specific. He frames it as radically accelerating the timeline. The big challenge in a tokamak, that giant magnetic donut, is containing a plasma that is hotter than the core of the sun.
Using magnets?
Using incredibly precise, powerful magnetic fields. And that plasma is chaotic. It's a massively complex dynamics problem. So the AI's role is first to model and optimize the magnetic coil configurations in real time. It's trying to stabilize that volatile plasma, keep it contained.
Okay, that makes sense.
And second, maybe even more importantly, it's helping with material design. You need materials for the reactor wall that can withstand this incredible neutron bombardment and heat without degrading. That ties right back to the material science work. It's a true root node application.
Which brings us to the downstream benefits. Let's say it works. We get viable fusion. What does a world with unlimited, clean, cheap energy actually look like?
This is where you see the power of a root node solution. If energy is almost free, problems that were just too expensive to solve suddenly become trivial.
Like water access.
That's the biggest one. You could put massive, energy-guzzling desalination plants everywhere. The cost of splitting salt from water would become negligible. You could transform entire continents.
And you mentioned space. Rocket fuel.
Yeah, making rocket fuel. You split hydrogen and oxygen from seawater. That takes enormous amounts of energy right now. With cheap, clean power, you can run those plants 204/7. It completely changes the economics of space exploration.
So we're going from Earth-scale energy to the fundamentals of computation. They're also using AI to advance quantum computing.
Right. They're collaborating with Google's quantum AI team, and the focus is on error correction codes.
Why is that so critical?
Because qubits, the basis of quantum computing, are incredibly fragile. They suffer from what's called decoherence. They lose their quantum state because of noise from the environment. This creates errors.
So you can't get a reliable calculation.
Not unless you can correct those errors faster than they happen. And the way these errors spread through a quantum circuit is just, it's far too complex for a human programmer to handle.
So the AI steps in to manage the chaos.
Precisely. The ML system analyzes the patterns of noise and figures out the best way to encode the information redundantly. It designs the error correction codes. It's a perfect symbiotic relationship, really. ML helps build a stable quantum computer.
And then the quantum computer will probably help build the next generation of ML.
That's the long-term bet.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. Away from the applications and into the debate around the field itself. The scaling question. For a while, the story was either that just making models bigger would lead to endless gains, or that we'd hit a hard wall.
And Hassabis' take is it's much more nuanced. He's very clear. They have not hit a hard wall, but he does suggest there might be diminishing returns. The key thing is that progress isn't flatlining. It's not becoming asymptotic, but you're not necessarily doubling performance every single time you double the compute anymore.
So it's somewhere in between. It's still worth doing. The gains are still significant, but the engineering is getting harder.
Exactly. And because of that, DeepMind's strategy is split. It's about 50% on scaling, just pushing the hardware, and 50% on fundamental innovation. His core belief is that you need both to get to AGI. You can't just scale your way there.
What about the data problem? The idea that we're going to run out of internet to train on?
They're tackling that head on. The key is to generate data instead of just passively consuming it. And the main strategy here is using synthetic data.
Data generated by the AI itself?
Right. But it only works in domains where you can objectively verify the answer.
Like math or coding.
Exactly. In those fields, the model can generate millions of new, complex problems and then use formal logic or just run the code to verify the solution. This creates a potentially infinite feedback loop of high-quality training data. It basically bypasses the limits of the public internet.
So the models are doing science, generating their own data, but they still have these really strange flaws, these Achilles heels that show just how far we are from real intelligence.
Which takes us right into this paradox of intelligence, the problem of consistency and reliability.
Right, section 2.
This inconsistency, what's being called the jagged intelligence problem, is maybe the clearest sign that these models don't think like we do. You have a system like Gemini 3 that can do things at a superhuman level.
They're like winning gold medals in the International Maths Olympiad.
Right, which involves incredibly abstract reasoning that only the top students in the world can manage.
But then you ask it a simple question.
And it completely whiffs. It might struggle with a basic high school logic problem. It can't play a decent game of chess right out of the box, which is just bizarre given the history of AI.
So you have this strange profile. PhD level in one area, and then, I don't know, below high school level in another, sometimes very related area.
That unevenness is the key. A true general intelligence implies a broad consistency. If you met a person who was a genius at quantum physics, but couldn't reliably count the letters in a word, you'd think something was very wrong. That's the problem we have now.
So why is that happening? Is it one simple bug?
It seems to be a couple of things. One is about input perception, how the model sees the input. It's called tokenization. When we read, we see letters. The model often sees a whole word or a phrase as a single chunk of information, a single token.
So asking it to count the letters in a long word is actually a weirdly hard task for it.
It can be, yeah. It wasn't trained to see letters as individual things to be counted. But that's just perception. The deeper issue is the lack of reliable reasoning and thinking when it's generating an answer.
The inference stage.
Right. You can tell a model to think step by step, and it helps, but it's not consistent yet. It doesn't reliably use that extra time to double-check its work or use tools to verify facts.
He estimates they're only about halfway there on that.
It's like talking to someone who just blurts out the first thing that comes to their mind. A truly intelligent system, human or otherwise, pauses, reflects, and adjusts its answer. That robust internal feedback loop is still a work in progress.
And that leads directly to the problem that just won't go away: hallucinations.
Yeah. And in the newer, more capable models, a lot of the hallucinations aren't from total ignorance. They come from the fact that the system is basically designed to always give an answer, even when it's uncertain.
It forces an answer instead of just saying, I don't know.
Which is where the lesson from AlphaFold becomes so important for AGI.
The confidence score.
Absolutely. AlphaFold didn't just give you a protein structure. It told you exactly how confident it was about each part of that structure. AGI models have to do the same. They need to output a score that reflects their confidence in the factual accuracy of what they're saying.
Which requires a totally different kind of process, right? It's not just predicting the next word anymore.
It's introspection. The model has to generate an answer, then go back over it, check its own work, and only then present it as fact with a reliability score attached. Without that, you can't trust it for anything high stakes.
This need for self-discovery brings up another great comparison he makes: AlphaGo versus AlphaZero. He says current models are like AlphaGo.
Right. AlphaGo started with all of human knowledge, thousands of pro Go games, and compressed it. That's what foundation models do with the internet.
But AlphaZero?
AlphaZero started with nothing, just the rules of the game. It learned purely by playing against itself, through self-discovery.
So the missing piece is that ability for online continual learning.
Exactly. Current models are static. They're trained, and that's it. They don't learn from their experiences in the world after that. The next big leap is moving to a system that can interact with the world and update its own understanding dynamically, like AlphaZero did. The knowledge has to be alive.
And if an AI is going to learn from experience, it needs a world to learn in.
Which takes us straight to Section 3, world models. Hassabis calls this his longest-standing passion. It's the key to getting past the limits of just learning from language.
Because language can only describe so much.
It's amazing how much is in language, common sense, physics, but it's still a second-hand account of the world. It's fundamentally deficient in describing certain things.
Like what? What are the big gaps?
Well, spatial dynamics, for one, how objects relate in 3D space. It also lacks a really deep, intuitive grasp of physics. It can read about a hammer, but it doesn't understand the physical cause and effect of striking a nail.
And it completely fails on sensory experiences, right? Things that are hard to put into words.
Exactly. The feel of balancing a particular smell, you have to experience those things. And if a model lacks that intuitive physics and spatial awareness, it can never be a truly reliable robot or a universal assistant that works in the physical world.
This is why world models are so important. So what are they exactly?
A world model is an internal representation of the mechanics of the world. It's an internalized physics engine that understands cause and effect. It allows an agent to predict what will happen next if it takes a certain action.
And how do you prove a system actually has that kind of deep understanding?
The test is generation. Can the system generate a realistic world? Can it generate a causally accurate video of something happening? If it can do that, and we're seeing this with their projects like VO for video and Genie for interactive worlds, it implies that it must have encapsulated the underlying mechanics.
So let's talk about how these projects fit together. You have VO and Genie making the worlds, and then you have Sima, the simulated agents.
Sima is their big experiment in general agency. They put these intelligent agents into complex, open-world video games like No Man's Sky.
So these huge, complex virtual worlds with their own physics.
Right, and the agent is directed using natural language with Gemini as its brain. So it can navigate, plan, do multi-step tasks.
And this leads to this incredible idea of plugging Genie, the world creator, directly into Sima, the agent.
This is the AlphaZero moment for the real world. It creates this infinite training loop. The sim agent acts, and Genie generates a new part of the world on the fly in response to its actions. This constantly creates new, harder challenges for the agent to solve.
Which is obviously huge for training robots, but also has these other applications, like in gaming.
Oh, absolutely. Current NPCs, the non-player characters in games, are boring because they're scripted. With this, you could have NPCs that have dynamic internal states and react in genuinely surprising ways.
But wait, if the AI is generating the world itself, we circle back to a familiar problem. Not just language hallucination, but hallucinating physics.
That's the core technical challenge. The generated world might look plausible, but if the underlying physics are wrong, it's useless for training a robot that has to work in the real world. You need ground truth.
So how are they solving that?
With a rigorous physics benchmark, they're basically going back to basics. They use high-precision game engines to create ground truth videos of simple things. A ball rolling down a ramp, a pendulum swinging.
So high school physics experiments.
Essentially, yes. They train the world model on these simple, verifiable videos to ensure it accurately learns things like Newton's laws of motion. It has to pass the physics test.
It's not just about making a video look good anymore.
No. We're moving beyond what a human thinks looks realistic to what is scientifically and mathematically accurate. Only then can you trust it.
And this work on simulation quickly moves from the practical to the deeply philosophical. Hassabis talks about using these simulations to rerun evolution.
This is the ultimate dream for basic science. If you can accurately model these complex systems, you can run millions of years of agent evolution in a safe digital sandbox. You could study the origins of life, the emergence of consciousness.
The big advantage being statistical power.
The biggest. In the real world, you can't rerun an experiment a million times with slightly different starting conditions. In a simulation, you can. You get a statistically robust understanding of hugely complex things like climate or social dynamics. You gain scientific control over chaos.
But given what we know about emergent properties, the AI learning things it wasn't taught, is it safe to run millions of these evolving agents together?
Caution is key for that exact reason. You could see some dangerous behaviors emerge. But that's also the beauty of simulation. You can run it all in a secure sandbox, completely air-gapped from the outside world with constant monitoring.
But if it's that complex, how can humans even monitor it all?
They can't. You'll need other AI tools to do the monitoring. AI agents watching the other AI agents, flagging anything interesting or worrying. The only way to manage superhuman complexity is with superhuman oversight.
Which brings us out of the lab and into the messy reality of the world. The commercial frenzy, the so-called AI bubble.
Right. And on this, his view has always been very consistent. AI is overhyped in the short term, but vastly underappreciated in the medium to long term.
And he makes a really important distinction about the bubble.
He does. He says it's not a binary thing. Sure, some parts of the ecosystem are a bubble. Seed rounds for tiny startups raising at billion-dollar valuations with no real tech. That's probably not sustainable.
But for the big established players?
For companies like Google that have the massive infrastructure, the TPU clusters, and the existing products like Search and YouTube to plug this into, there's a real business case underpinning the valuation.
But this environment, this pretty crazy race condition between companies and nations, how does that affect the science?
It makes it much harder to do slow, careful, rigorous science. There's this tension between scientific caution and commercial speed. A company's always incentivized to go for the big, flashy release, rather than the slow, foundational work that might not pay off for years.
There are pros to the race, though, aren't there?
Oh, for sure. It means massive resources are being thrown at the problem, which accelerates everything. And it means the public is only a few months behind the frontier, which is great for accountability.
And the cons?
The big con is the risk of repeating our mistakes, specifically the mistakes we made with social media. We built those systems to maximize engagement.
Which led to echo chambers and radicalization.
Exactly. And the one thing we must not do is design AGI to maximize user engagement. That would be a catastrophe.
So how do you avoid that? How are they thinking about designing the AI's actual personality?
This is critical. He says they've put extreme care into designing the Gemini 3 persona. They're trying to build a kind of scientific personality. It's warm, it's helpful, but, and this is the key part, it is grounded, in fact, and will push back in a friendly way if you start saying things that don't make sense.
So if a user starts talking about flat Earth theories, the AI won't just agree.
No, it will challenge them. Gently, but firmly. The base personality is designed to adhere to the scientific method. It's a reality check. You can add personalization on top, make it funnier or whatever, but that core is non-negotiable. It's designed for use in science and medicine.
Let's talk about the sheer scale of the societal shift. The Industrial Revolution analogy comes up a lot, but the numbers Hassabis projects are staggering.
They really are. And it's important to understand the timeline of the first revolution. It brought incredible benefits, no question, modern medicine, abundant food, all of it. But it took about a century for society to adapt.
A century to do what?
A century to build everything we take for granted now. Unions, labor laws, mass education systems, city planning. The entire structure of society had to be rebuilt over generations, and it was a very painful, messy process.
And AGI is moving much, much faster.
His projection is stark. He thinks AI will be 10 times bigger in its impact than the Industrial Revolution, and it will happen 10 times faster.
So, a century of change in a decade.
A single decade. Society just can't adapt organically at that speed. Institutions can't reform that fast. You can't rebalance the entire labor market in 10 years. It demands that we prepare preemptively.
Which means we need to think seriously about a post-AGI economy. The whole idea of a job might not work the same way.
Right. If AI provides abundance, especially with something like fusion energy, the whole system of exchanging labor for resources breaks down. We need new economic models.
People always bring up universal basic income, UBI.
And he says UBI might be a component, a temporary patch, but it's not the full solution. It doesn't solve the long-term problem of how to distribute resources or, more importantly, where people find purpose.
So what are the bigger ideas?
Well, we need new systems of governance. He floats ideas like direct democracy, where people vote with digital credits. And then he throws out this really wild idea that maybe your voting influence could be scaled based on how good your past decisions were, a system that tries to reward rational decision-making.
These are huge philosophical questions, and it leads to the ultimate one. If we solve scarcity, where does human purpose come from?
That's the crisis, isn't it? For most of human history, purposes come from work, from providing for your family. If that necessity disappears, we face a global crisis of meaning. We have to start thinking about what a fulfilling life looks like when it's not defined by productivity.
Okay, what about the immediate near-term risks? What is the thing he's worried about right now?
The transition from the passive systems we have now to fully autonomous agent-based systems, which he thinks will be here reliably in the next couple of years. And the risk goes way up with agents. Dramatically, because they are autonomous and goal-directed. So the immediate work that's needed is a massive effort in cyber defense. We need to prepare for a world where there are millions of intelligent agents roaming the internet.
And his biggest worry isn't the tech itself, but our inability to coordinate as a species.
Yes. The geopolitical tensions, the fragmented institutions. We struggle to agree on slow-moving problems like climate change. How are we going to coordinate on a technology moving this fast?
So what's the hope?
The grim hope, he says, is that a medium-sized incident, something serious but not catastrophic, might happen and serve as a wake-up call for humanity. A warning shot that forces us to get serious about international standards before it's too late.
Which takes us to our last section. Beyond the risks, beyond society, to the ultimate limit of all this work, the philosophical core.
Right. The nature of computation itself. And for Hassabis, this is clearly his life's mission. His guiding theory has always been that if you could build AGI, a working simulation of a mind, you can then use it as a tool.
A tool for what?
To compare against the real human mind. That comparison acts like a scientific filter. It will highlight what is special and remaining about human consciousness. The things the simulation can't replicate, subjective experience, certain kinds of creativity, dreams. It's a grand experiment to finally understand ourselves.
And the central question driving all of this is the Turing machine question. What is ultimately computable?
It's the absolute frontier. The Turing machine is our theoretical model for classical computation. The question is, does the entire universe operate within those rules? And as he says, so far, nobody's found anything in the universe that's non-computable.
Everything we thought was intractable, like protein folding, has turned out to be just a very hard computation problem.
Exactly. Which suggests the universe is, at its core, understandable through computation, which then leads to the big debate in physics and neuroscience about consciousness. Is it a classical process, or does it involve some kind of quantum magic in the brain, like Roger Penrose thinks?
And where does Hassabis land on that?
His working hypothesis, the one DeepMind is built on, is that it's classical. He's betting that a powerful enough classical Turing machine can, in principle, model everything, including the mind. The quantum idea is fascinating, but for now, the evidence points towards computation.
And this is all supported by this really deep idea from physics that information might be the most fundamental thing in the universe, more fundamental than energy or matter.
Right, and if information is the foundation of everything, then everything is a computation. Our senses, our thoughts, it's all just complex data streams. We are, in this view, incredibly sophisticated information processing systems.
Which strongly suggests that our experience of the world is ultimately computable.
And this loops all the way back to the power of simulation. It's their ultimate tool for discovery, because as he says, if you can simulate it, then in some sense, you've understood it. DeepMind's entire mission is a search for that limit, the boundary of what a Turing machine can do.
Wow, an absolutely immense vision. The scale of it is it's staggering. Okay, let's try to synthesize the key takeaways from all that.
I think the first is that this progress is just relentless. It's being driven by this 50-50 split, half scaling up the compute and half true scientific innovation on these core root node problems like fusion.
And the next big hurdle for AGI itself is fixing that jagged intelligence, getting consistent reasoning and building reliable world models that are actually grounded in real physics.
Then there's the societal piece. We are staring down a period of change that could be 10 times bigger and 10 times faster than the Industrial Revolution. That demands we start preparing now.
Designing AI with that scientific personality, not a social media personality, and starting the very hard conversation about new economic models, about where we find purpose in a world after scarcity.
And finally, that the whole mission to build AGI is, at its core, a philosophical quest. It's a scientific experiment to find the absolute limits of computation, which forces us to figure out what, if anything, is special about us.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. If the whole point of this is to find the limit of what a Turing machine can compute, and if it turns out the whole universe is computationally tractable, does the idea of a simulation sandbox that we control really hold up? Or are we already blurring the line between the simulated worlds these agents will live in and the physical world we inhabit? We'll leave you to consider where the border between the two truly lies.